Oh, thank you, Simon. Yeah,
Welcome.
St. Gobnet is one that I'd never heard of before either, and we'll actually encounter in the chapter next week. But it seemed like her story fits so beautifully with the whole concept of Palm Sunday and Holy Week and the Easter Sunday of Resurrection that is coming. It's about that journey of life from where you have been through the experiences of life into what you yet can be. And I loved in that video when she changed into a child after the communion with the deer that I'll speak of in a little while. And think about in your life where you've been particularly out in nature and noticed an animal or noticed a flower or a tree that you've communed with, and how in that sense of oneness and connection, you become like a child again, and you realize anew the wonder and beauty that is present in life, and how we all need moments to remember of that. We're currently in the season of Lent, which is that spiritual preparatory time for Easter, so that we can really encounter this on a personal spiritual level and not just as a philosophical idea, but to really live it. That's one of the things that I've always loved about Unity, is Unity has been called practical Christianity, is how do you practically incorporate the spiritual principles into your daily life. And when you do that, you find that life is an incredible journey, and you begin to notice anew the signs along the way, the presences of comfort along the way during the journey of your life. This month has been Peregrinatio, which is following the thread and wandering and allowing life to unfold. I remember years ago I went to Al-Anon, and one of the things that I learned that was powerful for me was accept life on life's terms in this moment. Don't be what if or if only, be present. And I realized that was about being present in this holy moment and encountering whatever is here, because everything that's present in our lives is there with us, part of the unfolding of our souls. And so wandering is an invitation to let go of our own agendas and to discover where God is leading. And I think that is the perfect description of what the man Jesus did as he encountered not only Palm Sunday, but all of the experiences of Holy Week that take him ultimately to the crucifixion and then beyond, into the 3 days of rest in the tomb, and then back out in a place of resurrection in the garden, in the beauty of nature and in the peace of the garden. Matthew Fox talks about 4 spiritual paths, and there are 2 that occur right now that are part of this shift into spring and into Easter. We're going from the wintertime via negativa, which is befriending the darkness and letting go and letting be. It's like the seed beneath the ground that is alive, but it's not yet time for it to emerge. It's doing that inner work, and there is a beauty to the winter season of that. As an introvert who loves to pray and meditate and be still and be in nature, I love that time of sitting by the hearth in quiet with the darkness around, but sitting beside the light. So we go from that into the spring, which is the via creativa, the creative path, the path of befriending our divinity, our role as the embodied presence of the divine, and giving birth to beauty and noticing the beauty that is being born all around us anew, as the world itself joins us in this spiritual journey back into resurrection with spring. The Holy Week experience is a beautiful example of a soul being willing to wander and to follow the thread, letting go of outer agendas, being present in the moment, and walking with the walk where God is leading. Because this experience that he goes through from Palm Sunday, where he is celebrated and welcomed to Jerusalem, Jerusalem, habitation of peace, he comes in and they lay the palms on the ground and their cloaks on the ground as he rides in. And then by the end of the week, he's been betrayed. He's been through several trials. He's found guilty. He has to walk the path to Calvary, to the cross, go through the experience of crucifixion and death, be laid in a tomb by loving hands, spend that time in that high energy of the unseen, but still in the world, space and energy before he emerges as a living example to us of who we really are as well. That we are eternal spiritual beings having an earthly experience for a divine reason. Even when it takes us through landscapes that are difficult and challenging and frightening, the presence of the divine is ever with us. During this Holy Week, he is welcomed with open arms, and then he is judged and condemned. Far, far on the spectrum. He spends time in crowds of people who come to see him and feel him and hear whatever message he will share with them. He then has time in the upper room where he gathers with that inner circle of devoted followers who are seeking to really understand the message that he is giving. And he knows they're not quite getting it yet, even though I know I don't quite get it at the depth that I need to yet. But he remains lovingly present with them and reminds them that even when he is gone physically, he will be with them in love and grace and spirit, always and forever. The upper room is where he meets, and that represents that higher level of consciousness right within the busyness of the outer world and the city of Jerusalem. That was this incredible cultural and spiritual melting pot for the Middle East. And so in the midst of this city that was busy because Passover was occurring and all the different traditions were there. And so it was a massive center for trade and people. And in the midst of that is this upper room where a small circle gather, holding the light together and walking this spiritual path. I've always loved what Margaret Mead said, that when she's asked, well, what can a small circle of people ever do? And she said, it's the small circles of people that are the only ones who have ever really changed the world. It starts within an individual and who gathers with those who are like-minded. And then that message begins to be embodied through more and more individuals. And it's that growth, but it starts in the hearts of the individuals who then find one another so that they can continue to walk this path, not alone, but with others. It's not by accident that most spiritual traditions do have time apart for each pilgrim, but they also gift that pilgrim with a circle of kindred souls, fellow disciples, fellow followers, fellow keepers of the light of whatever tradition it is. And so Jesus was blessed that week to have this circle of inner kindred anamkara, soul friends. And he created and took the elementals of everyday life and incorporated them into two rituals that are very much a part of the Christian message. The first one is the remembrance that this is all about loving kindness, metta, as the Buddhist would say, and being of service and tenderly caring for others. This is the ritual of the foot washing. And in ministerial school, I was too late to sign up for the regular rituals, and I ended up having to sign up for the foot washing, and I was terrified. I've never done that. I thought it sounded strange. It was one of the most beautiful and profound moments of my life, to kneel and to tenderly wash the feet of my classmates. We were all in tears, whether we were giving or receiving. And it takes you back to the moment with Magdalene where she has washed his feet out of love and tenderness, so that he has been blessed with the very feet that will walk the path of life in the coming days. And so Jesus takes this ritual that he was gifted with and gifts it to this inner circle and says, as I've done, do this yourself as well. He then does the beautiful ritual of communion with bread and with wine. These were common elements found on the table of everyone, from the richest to the poorest. The richest would have other food and finer wine, but everyone had the elements of bread and wine. These were ancient sacred elements from the earth-based traditions forever. And so those everyday elements are taken and sanctified and blessed and said, receive this. And the wine represents the flowing life force, and the bread represents the physical embodiment of it, present in the world. And so the receiving of communion is recognizing that you are embodied divine energy and that you are filled with that ever-flowing spirit of the divine as well. That is what enervates you. It's what brings you life. It's what brings you purpose. And so he shared these elements with one and with all and said, do this in remembrance of me, of the fact that heaven and earth, the unseen and the seen, the ordinary and the sublime are all woven together in oneness of the divine. He goes through the week and he does the Via Dolorosa, the path of the sorrows, where there are 14 stations of the cross that are found in traditional Catholic churches. And each one of those is a marker on this path toward Golgotha, toward the place of the crucifixion that is taking place. And on that path, he is met by people who help. Veronica is one who brings a cloth and wipes his face. Simon actually helps carry the cross for part of the path. There are 3 who made the entire journey with him: Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and John, the beloved, are the 3 that by tradition walked the whole path. And the one who walked the entire path of Jesus's life from before the first breath to after the last breath is the Mother Mary, who was there from birth to tomb, loving and embracing and holding all of it. The divine feminine, the presence of the mother in the midst of it all. And Jesus in the midst of it of all, also calling and connecting to Divine Father as well. He called God Abba, which was like Papa. It was a term of endearment that he shared and that he spoke with. And from the cross itself, he calls out, Father, Abba. And so the Divine Father is present with him. The Divine Mother is present with him. and a very small inner circle of depth soul Anamkara are with him through this experience. For all of us, we go through times of challenge, and this path this week represents how we can move through all of these events and try and find that center of peace that I shared in the meditation earlier, wherever the journey takes us. Saint Gobnut and the deer is a story that is very much like this sense of being willing to wander to find your faith, letting go of your own agenda and just discovering where God is. As Simon said, she was from the County Clare and was called to go to Inishere Island, which was a place of sacred energy and blessings. And there an angel told her to go to a place where 9 white deer would be grazing. And when she found the 9 white deer, that would be her place for her to establish herself, to allow herself to be born anew, to have the eyes of the child and to see the world with wonder, and to create her spiritual place where she would invite others to gather. She wandered for a long time, like that Via Dolorosa, different places. She wandered Waterford, Cork and Kerry, and ultimately came to Ballyvourney, which I'd never heard of before, but is quite a name, Ballyvourney, by the River Sulaine. And there, from a hilltop, she looked and she saw 9 white deer grazing. And I love the poem that Christine wrote and that Simon sang of, where she sits down upon the ground, knowing she's found her place. And then to be there and to create such a center of peace and presence, a sense of wonder and communion with the moment and with all the parts of it, that as she sits there in prayer and welcoming and openness and knowingness, the deer themselves come and she can feel their noses touching her. Communion and oneness. And from that place, she built a monastery, became famous for her spiritual teachings, her healing of the sick, and she maintained an amazing colony of bees. She used the honey for its healing properties. The bees, they said, would just dance around her. And there was a time where there was a danger that an army came up and was threatening to do harm. And all she did was ask the bees to protect, and they went out and swarmed, and the army took off instantly and caused no harm to anyone or anything. And so she went through this journey. I can just imagine, as we all journey, is this the place? Okay, there are 3 deer here. Is that close enough? No, the dream said 9. Oh, look, there are 8 brown deer. That's pretty close. No, keep journeying. Trust the vision that is calling you forward of what is your next place of blessing. And I know that when Lane and I came to Unity in Port Townsend, it was as though we had followed the path and found a field with 9 white deer. And with that, we left behind Texas and all the agendas and the expectations, and we opened to be present here. Each one of you is here because the spiritual journey, just like for us, has brought you here. Of all of the places you could be in the world, this is where you've chosen to be this day. Centered together. And so like the Master Way Shower Jesus going through Holy Week, and St. Gobnut wandering Ireland until she found the place of her vision. So we are called. And when we found it and settle in there, give yourself the gift of recognizing that you were on that road in the heart, and do not be hurried. This day, right where you are, let this day and this moment and this place be a place of resurrection for you going into Holy Week. Center now and recognize the gifts of where you are and be at peace. I love the line in her poem. Is there a place for each of us where we no longer yearn to be elsewhere, where our work is simply to soften and wait and pay close attention? So sit on your hillside, let the deer come and commune with you, and then, like the bees, transmute your labor, your life, your journey into gold. Blessings.